Welcome back from the break. This Christmas, it's quite likely that many of us are going to overindulge, whether it be spending or eating. What are the do's and don'ts? Bass finds out more.
Christmas is fast approaching and the silly season is here. People tend to overspend or overindulge over this time, and I'm here with Dr. Ricardo George to find out what that results in when people overindulge. How does it affect them? How does it affect them mentally or in health-wise? How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Bass. Thank you for having me on today.
It's a pleasure. And so what are your thoughts? What are some of the ways that people tend to overindulge and then pay the price later?
Certainly, probably changing a lot of their typical behaviors. It happens very easily. So they may eat more than typically would. They'll stay out later. They may drink more alcohol than they usually would. They may exercise less. So a lot of the changes in the behavior shifts very significantly to things that we wouldn't ordinarily do. Look, as a chiropractor, my main focus in my practice is really on the nervous system and how the body works, and we typically make quite a few measurements on looking at how the system's working, and that's typically beyond or deeper than people's conscious awareness. So what I typically see is some changes or some indications that the brain and the nervous system starts to struggle a little bit. So I start seeing more stress patterns emerge, more fatigue patterns, more issues perhaps with disconnections, and so I try to address those as effectively as I can with people, so they can start to be aware of the changes in their bodies, because the body's really going to be the feedback components to give them an indication about that overindulgence or overspending, and then help them to reconnect with that so they can have a festive season that's more festive, more enjoyable, more fulfilling. Typically, for example, let's say with work functions, I've seen a couple of people where I can certainly see the nervous system's in a fight or flight response. It's overactive, and they feel obligated to go along to these occasions, not really wanting to do it, but feeling obligated to go along and do it. And the body reflects that, so there's a lot of energy required to participate in that process, and then they deal with the consequences of overspent that energy, where the next few days they feel a little more exhausted, a little bit tired.
There's the, I guess, doing things out of obligation. There's also people doing that with family. They're catching up and they're seeing family members that they normally probably avoid or escape most of the year, and then they have to catch up with them over this season. So where do you see that? Do you see that translate as tension in their body, in their physical well-being, their shoulders, are they a bit more muscular tense?
That's a fascinating one. There's probably no other time than this festive season where all the issues you have with your family come up, because now you're forced to spend some time with them, and any kind of stuff that's unresolved or unprocessed shows up in the physiology. So other things that we've seen, there was a study put out in 2016, and they measured people's fluctuations in weight gain, and they saw that there was a definite shift over periods of holiday season, and probably the greatest shifts would occur around about, let's say, up to 1% from ideal weight situations, and that has consequences also. The energy production is different. We start eating more carbohydrates and sweets and simple sugars, which changes the physiology. So just looking from a nervous system brain perspective, that typically causes more stress in the body. Things that sugars that are burnt up very, very quickly creates, again, more fluctuations in how the body works, and that leads you to different extremes, so you're not going to feel very good either.
What are some of the solutions that you would highly recommend for people to consider or contemplate going into the silly season? And rather than saying, I'll wait till I come out of it to detox, what could be some of the steps along the way that could make them better?
Okay, so listening to when your body said it's full and it's done, that's a good start. Again, perhaps not filling up your plate as much as you ordinarily would, enjoying things, eating a bit slower, keeping your fluids up, reducing alcohol intake. Probably the other best thing would be to, if you are going to have a big meal, perhaps have an intermittent fasting the next day. Get up in the morning, go watch the sunrise if you can. Watching sunsets are very good, and staying well hydrated is the other one.
Here, you're a local North Perth?
North Perth, yes, yeah.
So what's your email address?
mindandlifecenter@gmail.com.
Mind and Life Centre.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand, don't they?
Definitely, definitely.
And we definitely need to tweak them and fine-tune them, especially during the silly season.
100%.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Beth.
I'm Bas Tadros for Undercurrent.
Brian Tennant is a social justice advocate. His life didn't start off all that easy, but all he thinks about is other people. Let's take a listen.
My mother had it off with a Yugoslav in 1936, and of course the Yugoslav was already married. He was a miner in the goldfields, and he had it off with my mum. And of course, my mistake was I start breathing. My mum was destitute, and eventually I ended up in the children's court, charged with destitution. And I was 11 and a half months old. The magistrate declared me destitute and ordered my internment till I was 18. I spent the next 16 years in 3 orphanages: the family home under the Sisters of Mercy in Wembley, Castledea Boys Home in Wilson for junior boys, and Clontarf Boys Town, which is now an Aborigine college at Manning Road. I became president of the Miscellaneous Workers Union, now known as United Voice. A mate of mine who was a long-serving peace campaigner, he had to go to a conference in Queensland, and of course he was separated from his wife. He still loved his wife and children, so he could only have access on the weekends. So he says, Brian, could you go to the Eastern State Booking Office and get a return fare for me to Queensland? And when I got there, they said at 11 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, the sales of tickets will now cease and resume at 11:30 at the new price. The new price, the fares were going up 25%. There was a student close by, because I was a bit lacking writing, and I asked him, could you write a few lines? We'll have a petition. And the petition just said that we've been led by the media and the radio and television that the fares will go up at 25% on Monday. I was working in West Perth, so I got on my scooter and delivered the petition to the Commissioner of Railways. The media were there, and they agreed that it was wrong, and they agreed that if anyone come along the next couple of weeks and claimed that they were there, they would get the fare at the old price. And I realised then that with the help of the media, one can improve justice. A long time people would be in custody, and might take them a year before they get the trial. And when they're sentenced, they don't take into consideration the 12 months he's already served. I managed to get the minister to change the law where if someone is convicted and they've been in custody, their time starts from the time that they went into custody, not the time they were convicted. And so I had those sort of reforms with the help of the media. Well, for example, the Haley Dodd case, which is currently before the courts, so we're limited what we can really say. But when I actually saw the where she was supposed to have been murdered, according to the state, on the 29th of July, and people actually saw her well alive, many days after, and as far as I was concerned, that the judge should have taken those seriously and not used his record against him, because I know he's no more guilty than I am. It's on public record that witnesses saw her days after she was supposed to have been murdered, and on that alone. But even though DNA evidence has been produced, one professor says he could be involved. Another professor says it's highly questionable, and so now, of course, it's before the applicant court, which I believe will be April, May next year. And so I was so moved with that I had to actually pay for an advertisement in the paper, a few $1,000s, to let the people know in this state that by being tried by a judge alone on a most serious charge and using your record against you is just not right. But the convicting person on his record is wrong in the absence of independent verification. Believing is not good enough to convict someone beyond reasonable doubt, and the judge cannot convict, should not have convicted Mr. Walk on, beyond reasonable doubt on murder, because he's no more guilty than I am.
Thanks for tuning in to Undercurrent this week. Don't forget to download the WTV app and enjoy WTV free to air. Thanks very much for your company. See you next time.